Welcome to the What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting podcast show. If you're a foster mom, on the journey to adoption, already adopted, or somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out how to navigate the foster care system, wanting to grow your family through adoption, trying to balance everything, or stuck in that space of all things unknown, you're in the right place. What if there was a way to fast track your knowledge, prepare you for the good and the hard, and somebody who could answer that long list of questions I know you have? Hi friend, I'm Christine Marie, biblical mindset coach, adoptive mom, and previous foster parent of 77 children. Yep, you heard that right, 77 kiddos. I'm your host, and my goal is to help make your journey a lot easier by sharing my best tools, techniques, and skills that helped me pivot from foster care to adoption, fully surrender, and trust the process. I'm about to bring some calm to the chaos and show you how to navigate through this journey with a whole lot of grace. So go grab your cup of coffee and let's jump in. I am so excited to bring you another episode today, but today is a special episode. We have a guest for you today. His name is DJ Noble, and he does a lot. And so I'm super excited to share with you. He is a foster parent, a teacher, a previous radio host, a husband, parent, and he hosts a podcast, Off the Grid. DJ Noble, welcome to the podcast today. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let me ask you this. If you were to summarize your journey as a foster parent into one sentence, what would that be?
Challenging. Fostering is challenging, but worth it.
So tell us a little bit more so that they know, because I've talked to you before and we hit it off, but tell the audience a little bit more about your foster care journey.
Well, so my journey started it's about 15 years ago. So I started as a foster parent in the state of Virginia. Right now I'm in the state of Kansas. We started with a couple of kids, babies at the beginning. So we had, I think, 3 or 4 babies at the beginning that we were taking care of. Then also we were doing some contract work with the city that we were living in at the time. So there were some troubled kids that were having issues at home. A lot of them were teenagers. And so we would take them like once a month for the weekend and bring them into our homes. But primarily when we were in Virginia, we had pretty much either children that were as young as 3 months to about a year and a half. But we had a couple of kids that were a little bit older than that, but not too much older than that. And so we started there. We were there and we stopped fostering, I think, in 2016. Then we moved to Kansas in 2017. Now, that was a different experience because we had to go through the whole process again as though we had never been foster parents with the state of Kansas. So it took us almost, I want to say 2 years to get licensed.
That was one of the things that was crazy to me.
Yeah.
We took in foster kids. We weren't even licensed yet. They were like,
Wow.
It's nice to have a conversation with you on the phone. We have a placement for you.
Wow.
And it does happen that way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But then with you, when we were talking, you were like, yeah, it was 2 years. So
I think there was a lot of issues with paperwork, because not only fostering can sometimes burn people out, but actually being a case manager can do the same thing, and the various workers that are involved in foster care. So I think that what happened with us, there was a lot of paperwork that was dropped or mishandled or what have you. We had to redo on 1 or 2 occasions. So it got kind of lengthy, so to speak, to open our home. But yeah, eventually it happened. And so we've had a few kids since then. Our current placement has been there for the last 4 years, which is a long time.
Right.
Long time. So yeah, so it's been quite a journey, yeah, to say the least.
Thank you for sharing that. So my question, a follow-up question would be, have you worked with any biological families in this? Because if you've had a child for 4 years, that's a long time.
Oh yeah, I think it's for us as a family, or my wife and I as a unit, we see the biological family as an extension of our own kids, right? So it's their biological family. And for us, is just an extension of the family in a sense. I mean, you obviously have to follow the rules and the parameters of the court and things of that nature, but I think it's really for us, it's really important to extend ourselves to the biological family because when you look at it in a sense, that's who God put him with first, right? That's
Right.
the family that God gave him. Now, there's obviously at times a lot of dysfunction just because we live in a fallen world, but you know, we think it's the biological parents need, some support and some attention too. So we kind of see it as an extension because of that.
How did you get to that point though? Because for me, that was I think other foster parents who listen to the show might identify with this. It's
Mhm,
really, really easy, and of course hindsight's 2020, right? But it's really,
mhm,
really easy to feel like a lot of judgment towards the birth family because, like, why did you allow this to happen? So, talk to
mhm.
me a little bit about that because, like, oh, if I could do it all again,
Yeah.
I would be doing exactly what you're doing. I love that you are embracing them because, I mean, that's the child's identity. The child who's in your home, that
Mhm.
is their identity. That
Yep.
is where they came from. And when I'm even looking judgmental on them, I mean, children
Mhm.
pick up sense that, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me about that.
First of all, I think by having that type of relationship with the biological family helps you understand the child a little bit more and where they came from. So you can deal with their situations that they're going through or even some of the biological issues that they have. So I think that's even the mental health that they have or experiencing at the time. So you can get a lot of background history. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor with a lot of your kids that are foster kids, you have no information of the past, right? Like I don't know what the mom did during this time or what the dad did during this time or if somebody had cancer in the family or they ask all those questions that you have no idea, you can give no answer to. So getting to know the biological families and being involved with their lives gives us a really good understanding of, genetically how they function and also how they function socially. So you can kind of understand what they came through, especially if I have one of my kids here now, he came to us when he was 6 years old. So he has 6 or 6.5 years of development with his biological family. And if we don't understand how that family operates, then it's a lot more difficult to deal with the child. His younger brothers were 3.5 when they came. So obviously they had a lot less time, a lot less interaction with them. So it was easier to curtail their behaviors a little bit than was the older child. Because I mean, at that age, 6 years being with your original family is a long time, or being with any family, especially at that age. They're those ages are highly developmental ages. As far as the other thing is what we realized, my wife and I realized early on, there's always this issue of reunification, right? So that the courts have now, in most states, I think, have decided that in foster care, if they can, they need to reunify the child with their biological families. And so we knew that was kind of an uphill battle. So I think that's when really our thought process began to not necessarily change, but to develop because once they started, and I think this was even when I was in Virginia, they really encouraged the children to be connected with the biological family. So why not just develop a relationship with these people too? So, and we've got what we found out is we got to know a lot of these family members and actually have grown to, appreciate them or see them the way God sees them. You know, they make mistakes just like anybody else makes mistakes. No matter how great or how small those mistakes are, they obviously made mistakes to lose their children in the first place. But I think just that in itself, just seeing people the way God sees them and understanding that, they need love and care and support as well. They lost their children. Being a parent, I know that has to be extremely difficult no matter what those situations are. Now, there's obviously some extreme cases where children don't need to be around their biological families at all. But in other cases, and I think probably most of the time, that's not the case, right? So they need the bio families need healing too, or those kind of generational, they call it generational curses will continue on and on and on. And so we kind of want to see some of those as my wife and I, we want to see some of those generational things stop, with the kids, and even stop with some of the biological family as well. And what we've seen is some pretty interesting results from the bio families. And my wife stays in contact with most of them because it's usually the mom and or the grandmother. It's definitely that side that's really reaching out to her. And so she pretty much connects with them most of the time. And, the- we'll get testimonies of, hey, the dad or the mom is really progressing and it looks like they're getting their life together. Or we'll get a text from, a grandmother saying, hey, can you please pray for me? Our family is going through some things and we really need your prayer. Or it's things like that that we see on a regular basis that really helps us in, to know that we're not just taking care of their kids, but we're kind of taking taking care of their family in that sense too, like in a spiritual sense too.
So awesome, like shepherding them. It reminds me of just being such a gracious, loving shepherd. Tell me, what does that look like? So the kiddo comes to your home,
Hmm.
and then what happens? Like, just to give somebody kind of an outline of like, if this is their first time fostering, or maybe they haven't been in that place where they extended grace and love,
Right.
but they want to. So what would that look like?
Mm. I mean, the relationship obviously starts with the case manager first to get the family background. What does the family background look like? What are those dynamics first? Because there might be something in their documentation that says, look, by any means necessary, do not contact mom, dad, anybody on the biological family. Other times they'll say, yeah, here's mom's phone number, here's grandma's phone number, whatever the case may be, whoever the case it may be. And sometimes, I mean, but I think it starts with the case manager. So if you really want to get involved with the interacting with the parent, make sure that you first of all, get permission to do that, because that won't happen on every single case. I think we've been fortunate enough that I think almost every kid that came into our house, we had some type of contact with the biological family. But yeah, it definitely has to. I I I don't know how to say it the best way, but I think instinctively we want to see the children do better. And a lot of times when you deal with like those attachment issues, this child was with their parent for X amount of years or what have you, and now all of a sudden they're no longer in their care. They're going to be frustrated in some form or some fashion. So a lot of times you're thinking about not just getting in contact with the parent or have a relationship with the parent just to have it, but it's also for the child to make sure that they understand that, hey, look, your mom still loves you, your dad still loves you, grandma still loves you, grandpa still loves you, your aunt and uncle, whoever they may be, those people still love you. As a matter of fact, we just got an email from Uncle so and so, and they told me that they really miss you, they really care about you. And the kids need to be reassured about those things too. Or you might have a really difficult problem on your hand when you're dealing with the kids, but they know you have some type of contact or some type of relationship with their biological families. It makes them feel a whole lot better. Like there was one of my foster sons who I would say for a good year, he was emailing his dad, telling how much he missed him and this and that. And his dad would occasionally respond to him, but his dad had some issues. He couldn't necessarily respond every single time. But every
Mhm.
time he got that response from his dad, it brought so much joy to his heart.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's not just about, oh man, this parent has done this child wrong, but it's like you're helping a lot of people out. It's kind of a full circle deal here when you're uh, dealing with the entire entity of not just the kid, but the entire family.
And I love that you and your wife do this together, because that's
Hmm.
something we talked about. And so talk to us a little bit for couples who are how do maybe they haven't been a foster parent before,
Hmm.
or they're looking for what could this look like? How do you guys play
Hmm.
off of each other? Do you guys manage certain different things? Like how does
Yeah.
all that work?
I mean, she manages a lot of like the communication,
Okay.
right? So whether that be communicate, we just had case managers here today, whether it be through the case manager, whether that be through the courts, through the guardian ad litems, which is the lawyers, whether that be through the biological family, she pretty much handles almost all of those things. Now, I provide a tremendous amount of input at the same time, so but she pretty much manages all that stuff. But as far as parenting is concerned, we pretty much are co-parents, you know. So if something's going on in the home, like there was an issue at the home with one of our kids yesterday, he wouldn't listen. He refused to do what he was told. Then I walk through the door and I tell him, "Hey, get up, do this, do that," and he did exactly what I asked him to do. So
Right.
it's you know it's just that you're just really just parents. I mean, you're like you would parent any other of your children. Now, if you've never had children before and you go into foster care, that's a whole different ball game. So I really don't know about
Yeah.
that aspect. But I also worked in mental health for quite a few years before I went into became a foster parent. So for me, it was a lot easier transition because of that. Because I dealt with kids that were in the system as my clients, my own clients. So so for me and for my wife, it was a lot easier. Just to give you a little bit more about my background, when my wife was growing up, her parents used to bring in other family members or friends that had issues in their home. So there was always somebody outside of their family in the home. And
Mhm.
as for me, I grew up with cousins that were, outside their home, and my parents brought my cousins in to live with us. And I also had other family members that came in and lived with us from time to time. So for me, it was kind of a natural progression for us to be foster parents in that sense. But yeah, I think as far as again going back to the roles, that I think that plays into it too, because we both had a background and understanding of how we would like these things to work, you know. So if you are an aspiring foster parent, I would actually advise you to do a lot of reading, talk to a lot of different couples, you know, talk to moms and dads. If you're a dad, ask a dad what is your role in this thing? Because sometimes foster dads are just a lot of times I've seen are hands off for the most of the time and allow the wife to do almost everything. Whereas my wife she's the organizer. That's why I say, "Hey, look, hey, did you talk to some," but I'll remind her, "Hey, did you talk to so and so? Did you talk to the teacher? Did you talk to the principal? There's an IEP coming up. What happened?" I'll ask a lot of questions about what's going on with the children. I won't just let her do it all, but she's just a much better organizer than I am. So it's better
I
that she does it.
I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. One thing that I keep thinking about as we're talking is some of these kiddos you've had for a long time.
Hmm.
How do you and is it even possible to protect your heart? Like, how do you
Woo.
love a child completely, 100%, and yet prepare yourself for the thought? I mean, because you guys are so hands-on with these birth families,
Hmm.
and how do you prepare yourself for that? Like, the potential loss? I mean, have you
Yeah.
had massive heartbreak before? How did you navigate it?
Hmm.
That's just what keeps coming to my mind.
Yeah. Yes to all those questions. By the way, I guess it'd be yes, but I'll definitely explain it a little bit more. I think the thing that makes it easiest to foster is knowing that, and this may sound weird or cruel to some, but it's a job.
Right.
We see it as a job, like, and it's a calling, right? So
Right.
we're called to foster, right? So there's a calling. So knowing that fostering doesn't necessarily mean the rest of your life, but
Right.
it could be temporary, right? Just as if you're a school teacher, for example, and you have a student the whole school year, you are fostering that child to become the best they can be for the time that you have them. Does that make sense? So and I think that's exactly the way we see it as well. So if we know, okay, well, this one's going to be a little bit more long term than, you know, XYZ, this kid over here, right? We see, okay, well, we'll prepare ourselves and know that this is just something that's temporary. It may be temporary, but it may be a long term deal. But we're going to treat those kids the way they need to be treated. We've had knowing that, hey, look, we've had kids that have come in and out. And we know, okay, man, this what they experience with their bio family is not an easy one, and eventually, there's a good possibility they may come back. So we kind of prepare ourselves for that, but knowing the courts are going to send them back to their family anyway. So
Right.
those are the type of thing. It's almost kind of like mind games
Right.
that you have to play with yourself, like knowing that, hey, you have to go through all the possibilities. This may happen, that may happen. If this happens, then that may happen. We did have a heartbreak pretty was broken pretty bad at one point. We had a little girl that we got at the age of she was, I think, 3 months old, and she was at a failure to thrive. So she was doing pretty bad. So we got her back up to par. We actually did have a relationship with the biological mother, and I think the maternal grandmother as well. And she just wasn't stable. There was no way she was going to get her daughter back. There was just no way. So we were up for adoption. They had been, I think, when she was 9 months. They said, you know what, that there's there's no way she's going back to mom, and we can't find anybody else. So would you guys be willing to adopt? So at that point, we said, you know what? She's 9. The the only thing she really knows in this world is us.
Right.
So yeah, let's go ahead and proceed. Yeah, we're interested. So they're like, okay, well, we still have to find out if there's any a next of kin that would be willing to take her in. So we said, great. So this process continued for another 3 months. They said, yep, it looks like we're in the clear. Right. And then so we were prepared at that point, we were prepared to adopt.
And
And
how
then
old was she at this point?
she was at this point a year and 3 months. So
Okay.
15 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're set. They were like, well, we gotta send out one more round of letters to all these relatives, right? So we're like, okay, great. Go ahead and send the letters out, but we'll be ready to adopt. And then at the last minute, and then we were still in Virginia at this time. At last minute, there was an aunt from Texas that said, "Hey, I'll take her." So the aunt moved from Texas to Virginia. She only had her for about 9 months and just gave up.
Oh,
So this was the wild. This is kind of the heartbreaker thing too. This is what when you kind of like you're like, okay, what has God called me to do? Like it was heartbreaking to us that we had to give her up. Number one, number two, knowing that it only lasted but for a small season for in her life, that was tough too. But the other thing was that we had the option of fighting for her custody. But if we decided to go that route, we were no longer eligible to foster in the state of Virginia. They would have pretty much terminated our rights to foster if we challenged the courts in that way.
so you bring up a really good point here
Mhm,
because I get messages from foster parents quite often asking this question because you get to this point whenever you want to adopt, not for everybody, but some people get to
mhm,
this point when you're in the adoption piece and a family member comes forward, or they
mhm,
find a family member, or they find a friend
mhm,
of a family member, and they say, I feel like I should fight for this child because I love
Mm,
this child.
right.
Should I hire an attorney?
Mm,
And I'll tell you, every single time I say no.
mm,
No, you should not hire an attorney. And the reason I say no is not because I don't believe they should fight for this child,
mm.
but because we all have bank accounts.
Yeah,
The state has no limit to their bank account with these attorneys.
right.
You hire an attorney, that's fine. Bring it on.
Yeah,
We will, I mean, and that's the frustrating part
right.
because it's not fair.
It's not fair at all. It's not fair at all. But that kind of goes back to an original point. They're not your kids, so to speak, right? They're not your kids. These kids belong to somebody else. God put them in a different family than yours, and your job is to foster them, right? Now, if there's nobody that comes forward, great. They're a part of your family for the rest of your life. So be it, and that's great. But that's the hardest. It's really hard to to balance a lot of these thoughts. And so it's not always an easy process whatsoever. So I'm not going to say here, hey, look, this you should do A, B, and C, and everything will turn out great. No, it's all these kids that you get that come into your home are a case by case basis. You know, no kid is equal or no family is the same. So I really can't say like for each situation, I'd have to know exactly what's going on in the family with that child and with the family and how do the foster parents feel about, adoption or just fostering, whatever the case may be. It's really a difficult situation to manage.
I agree. I don't know if you remember these, but when I was a kid, there were these choose your own adventure books.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And it was
yeah.
like, if you want to go here, turn to page whatever.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And it's so crazy because I feel like that's what foster parenting is
Mm,
like you were talking about like the dynamics of the birth family, dynamics of the child, dynamics of, I mean, you
hmm.
have to think about the personal dynamics of the caseworker, like
Yes.
the
That
attorney. There's so many people involved. And like you
too
said,
many.
it's a job.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest mistake that I didn't realize is it was my job. When I signed up that I'm a
Yeah.
foster parent, my home then actually became like a state facility.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they can come into your home,
Yeah.
whenever they want. They can check through whatever they want. They can talk
Right.
to your doctors. Like you become, in essence, underpaid. Should I say underpaid? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Underpaid state employee. But it's a calling.
Yeah.
It's a true calling because you are asked here. And I mean, not to go back and make another biblical example, but I mean, if you're a
No.
shepherd, you're out in the field with rain, sunshine, heat, no
Mm,
water. Like
mm,
you're in the elements.
yeah. And you
Shepherding these children that are not yours. Like those sheep, if you're a shepherd, those sheep usually aren't yours.
right.
They belong to the master God, like
Mhm.
these children. And so I think that was the biggest piece is, what I guess, hope that I
Yeah.
give people is I said, even though I'm telling you not to hire an attorney, like you have to know that that if this child's meant to be yours, like if God predestined that, that child will be
Mhm.
yours.
Right. Bottom line. That's the exact bottom line right there. So it's knowing God. I mean, yeah, so it's kinda like listening to God. What does God want you to do? Or how
Right.
does God want you to handle the situation? That's key with all that you do. And that's what we instill with our kids too. And we treat them the other aspect is knowing that you're fostering, knowing this is a job, you still have to treat them like they're your own, right?
Right. Yep.
And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of a lot of people are in it for the paycheck. Let's just be honest. And
Yep.
they're in it. Okay, well, I need to make some money. I need to do this. I need to do X, Y, Z. And they're in it for the money. Like if you're in it for the money, you're doing the wrong thing. Then it's probably not of God. You know, if that's what if that's what your goal is. Now, do we need more foster parents? Absolutely. But if you're in it just for a paycheck, hey, you might as well step
I
because
I I
it's
think
going to
that's
be a
one of the
difficult life.
I think that's one of the interesting points that you bring up. So, we typically took kiddos who were DD. I don't know if they're called the same thing where you're at, but they're developmentally disabled
Mm,
and they're
yeah,
much higher needs. It's
yeah.
typically like a monthly pay rate around 3,000 plus they got Social Security benefits, which there's a whole
Hmm.
other thing to that,
Yeah.
to like, I don't know, $4,000 a month, right?
Hmm.
But here's the thing. People are like, "Wow, that's a lot of money."
It's a
Well,
lot of work.
it's a lot of work. Like,
A
you
lot.
you can't even wrap your mind around what it's like to be cleaning poop off walls, to be, like, bathing a child 2 to 3 times a day because
Yes.
I mean, it's like the emotional stress, the lack of sleep, like,
Yes.
you need to look at and that's why I would tell people, foster parents, the rate that you get paid for a child is basically the level of, I wouldn't say liability,
Hmm.
but it's kinda connected to the liability, if I can say it, like, in a very
Yeah.
inhumane and I'm not meaning it that way,
No, no.
but
I could probably tell you too a little bit. Yeah. I don't think it's inhumane, but you know what the consequences are, right? So I know that when I look around my house, I live in a decent house. I mean, you can't tell because I'm redoing the downstairs, and this has been like a 3-year plan, which is kind of
Yeah,
wild, right?
yeah.
Um, but this is great for off the grid.
Right. Yes.
Just a little plug right there. But
Yes.
anyway,
Yes.
it's really difficult when you look around your house and you see like right above me is a bathroom upstairs, and the doorknob doesn't work anymore because one of my children got really upset about something that occurred and broke the door.
Right.
There's broken things all when you look through the shower head, like one of them disabled the shower head. So now there was water that went all over somebody messed with the toilet seat. So there was literally water flooding down to the next level. Right. It's,
Well,
I mean,
and,
it's those type of there's a lot of destructive things that you have kids that either have the children like you have, or for me, I have special needs kids. They do things that irritate the mess out of you. Like it's like, yeah, you might get a decent check or whatever, but like sometimes from in your the mental health sometimes you have to evaluate, is this worth it? Because
and,
because it could take a toll on you. Yeah.
we've had kiddos like that where I said, "You couldn't pay me $100,000 because mentally
Yeah.
I'm not okay."
Right,
And
right.
that's where it's like when somebody says it's about the money,
Mm.
it's
It
it's
shouldn't be.
never about the money because
Shouldn't be.
it's it's such a selfless job to be
Mhm.
a foster parent, and
Yeah. Takes away from your if you have biological kids too.
it
S
doesn't I mean, you can't just go like, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna go grab a coffee and sit down at the restaurant and hang out with my friends." Like, there's
Right,
none
right.
of that. None of
No.
that.
I
And
got one kid we have to be with him all the time. We can't let him do his own thing in the house. I'm not talking about just in the neighborhood, but in the house. You gotta make sure you keep an eye on him. Yeah, almost
that's
sleeping with one eye open, right?
what
Because
we had. We had alarms on doors
yeah, yeah.
because we had to know. I mean, 2 of our kids were one-to-one. And
Yeah.
so people are like, "Wow, you make $3,500 from your helping your kiddo." I'm like, "Yeah, but we pay a nanny salary because
Yeah, we had to do that too.
I can't be awake 24 hours a day."
Resources. So you're talking about resources. Now that's another story, right?
Right.
When our kids came, sometimes you'll get kids that come to you and you have no idea what their history is. You have no idea what their background is, and they come with all sorts of issues, and you're trying to figure things out. And a lot of states don't provide you initially with the resources that you need to help these kids. Now, if they bounced around from home to home to home, you might you might be lucky, that you get some of those resources. But if you have kids that are like fresh from their homes and never been in care before, and you're like, what in the world are these kids doing? Right? I don't understand. There was no signs. The only thing, the only thing you knew about them is they came, like, maybe from police custody or something like that. And you're trying to figure it all out. But you're like, man, I remember, yeah, I've had some doozies where like, how do I figure this out? So we've used that nanny service too. Like,
Right.
and we would put it in the details, and you know how many times we got turned away? Like, we've had nannies come to the house and like, "Nope, I'm not coming back." We've
Well,
had
that's the other thing, like,
yeah,
we frequently used care.com
yeah, we use
because
that too.
you can go in there and be really specific. Like, we needed
Yep,
somebody who had, certain, it was called OIS certified for
mm,
restraints and all kinds of stuff. I
right,
mean, there's so many different things. We needed them to be able to pass a background check. We needed them to, like,
right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that too, yeah.
specific ones that we needed to be able to speak sign language. And I mean, you're talking people who are 25, 30, $35 an hour
Right.
at this
That's
point.
coming out of your pocket.
That
Yeah.
is, I mean, even our one special needs kiddo, I think we had him for probably 6, 7 months
Mm,
before he was even approved for developmental services.
yeah,
And so we
yeah.
were making a base rate
Yep.
for all those months, but yet the care was not base
You didn't
rate.
get the care, you didn't get the care.
No, so it was out of our
Yeah.
pockets. So,
Yep.
anyways, it's just I if you are, and that's, I don't wanna scare anyone away,
No.
but we all start with the not so easy kiddo or maybe the
Yeah.
easy kiddo, and then but based on, your heart and your ability, and
Mhm.
I'm like, "You know what? I could take a kiddo that's a little bit harder than this. I could do a little bit harder."
I would
Because
advise anybody to start easy and then work your way up.
yeah,
Unless you worked in that field. Now,
right,
if you worked in the mental health field and you're like, "Well, I've dealt with so and so, this kid or that kid," and you say, "Yeah, I can handle it." That's a different story. But if you have never dealt with kids that has any type of special needs, I would not advise you to do that as your first or second kid, coming into your home. Because we've seen even and that's another situation. I don't even know the last time we really had respite with these kids, because everybody that we would get to provide respite to them, their homes would close down like within months. Like, I was like, is it because of our sometimes like because of our kids? I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
It just seemed interesting. I mean, that type of stuff happens because people, even though they're receiving respite, and like you said, some receiving a nice daily rate, they're like, oh no, rather shut down, do something else. That type of stuff happens. One thing I really didn't touch on, if you don't mind me,
I would love
is
that. Yes,
and I did talk about it a little bit, but the biological kids, you have to really be concerned about your biological children. That's the other aspect, because they're in the right and smack dab in the middle of it all. And I was just at a conference, a foster adopt conference here in Kansas, in the Kansas City area, and I heard some horrific stories. I've never had those type of stories that they were telling, but one thing I would advise, so this is a little piece of advice. So I have biological twin sons. They're the only two kids I have. They are both in college. But when we started fostering, the one thing we said was that we were not going to bring in kids that were older than them. Because when you have kids coming into your house outside of your own home, you don't know their whole story. You might get bits and pieces of it. Sometimes you might get lucky and get the whole story. But most of the time have no idea if they've been abused physically or sexually. And then a lot of times the kids that are abused in that way abuse others themselves, right? Because they were
right,
abused, so I guess this is what they're kind of conditioned to do, right?
right,
Or a defense mechanism is
right,
to do the same thing to somebody else. So we definitely didn't want anybody that was, overly aggressive, or, if they had those issues, we know that they weren't going to. pose any threat to our own sons, and I think or daughters, whoever you may have. I think that's really important too because your biological kids, they are your top priority, right?
Right.
So those are the people that God has entrusted you with. Now, God, that doesn't mean that God doesn't entrust you with other kids coming in, because He does too. But those are the people that God gave you, right? So
Right.
you have to treat those your biological kids with a lot of care, because a lot of the attention is going to be drawn away from them too. Because once these other kids come into your home, especially if they have special needs, a lot of their attention is going to go away, right? So they're going to a lot of times I think the biological kids can feel abandoned, or I don't know if that's the right word for that, but they may feel unappreciated, a little bit more unloved or not loved, or I don't know. There might be some resentment or some things towards the adoptive or the foster kids. So you have to really be careful, and you have to make sure that you include your biological kids, in this journey with you, because
Mm.
they're gonna remember, and they're gonna live with these thoughts for the rest of their lives, or these relationships. They're gonna have these relationships for the rest of their lives. So, even my sons, my bio sons, they talk about, you know, the kids we have in Virginia all the time. And
Yeah.
this has been years ago. They were 5 years old when we started this journey, right? It's been a long for them. It's been their pretty much their whole lives that they can remember.
Right.
Being foster brothers to these other kids that are coming into their home. So,
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like, a lot of times, or at least for us, we thought, well, we're the parents. We need to make the best decision for the family. But
hmm
hindsight, had we been able to do it all over again, it's really a family decision. It's
hmm
really where you need to
hmm
go to each of your kids and do check-ins with them every week,
hmm
every, few days. How are you doing with this? How is it going?
right,
I now recommend, and I've done episodes on this where I recommend putting your bio kids in counseling while you're a foster parent because there's a lot of times we feel like, well, I don't want
it's
to
good.
disappoint my mom or dad and say, like,
Yeah,
I'm frustrated with this situation or they're being
right.
mean to me or whatever's going on. That
hmm
they don't want to disappoint you as being their parent. And so, but they will tell a counselor or a therapist. Just as
Yeah,
like, our adoptive or our foster kiddos have therapists, CASAs,
right,
attorneys, caseworkers, like, and if our bio kids only have us, like, let's expand the circle of support a little
right.
bit for them. Just one thing that I wish, but I'm so thankful that you brought that up. I feel like we could talk for hours. Like like, there's so many things, and I'm
So
sure
much to talk about.
listeners yeah,
Yeah,
that listeners can definitely, like, read between the lines on some of the stuff we've discussed today, but I just wanna say thank you so much. If you would
you're
share
welcome.
really quickly about your Off the Grid podcast with everybody?
Absolutely. So, the Off the Grid podcast is, I would say, we talk about a lot of different things. So it could be from life and politics. It could be politics, right? I'm not scared to touch anything. I talk about sports. I talk about a lot of different things that deal with life, just life issues. All right. So we talk about politics, we talk about sports, we talk about music, because that's what I did music for 13 years. I was a radio host at a Christian radio station for 13 years. So we talk about education. So, but I always try to bring it back to Christ, right? So it's all Christ centered. So like I make sure that these guys, like whoever comes on, hey, look, no profanity, nothing like this. It needs to be kid friendly for the most part. There's some things that kids wouldn't understand, but you know, I just want I kind of yeah, but it's all these topics. There's several topics that are being discussed, and I launched it about 4 years ago, and then I stopped after 2 episodes because we moved, and then I relaunched it a couple of months ago. So I think I have 8 episodes up right now.
Very
So
cool.
yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
try to touch. I mean, some things people agree with, and some things people won't agree with, but that's okay. That's why it's kind of off the grid.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, DJ Noble, thank you so much for being
Yes.
here with us today.
Thank you.
And I'll include
Appreciate it.
your links in the information for the show notes, so people can go check you out. And thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Christine.
Hey friend, I hope that you loved today's episode. I pray it blessed you and helped you see that you have a friend in your corner who truly understands what you're walking through. If so, would you share this episode with someone who's been praying for a breakthrough in their own journey? It would also bless me big time and help others to find this podcast if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also submit your questions, topics that you would like covered, and find a community of like-minded mamas in my private Facebook group by searching What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting on Facebook. See you next time.